This video is not for those with sensitive stomachs. It's quite disturbing. Disturbing indeed. That A.J. Johnson girl is nasty. Just nasty. Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. The older I get, the more I understand why the Apostle Paul said it is good for a man not to touch a woman. And after hearing about the disturbing behavior that A.J. Johnson, the actress who starred in movies like House Party and Baby Boy, participated in, the more I understand why I don't want to touch any of these modern women without having a pair of hazmat gloves. Now, your A.J. Johnson went on a podcast and then talked about how for her 50th birthday, she decided to have a threesome with 2 men. And the way she talked about this threesome was disturbing is because she romanticized it by talking about how it was like a beautiful dance. Now, when I take a critical examination of the disturbing and dysfunctional behavior of your A.J. Johnson, it fits right in line with the pattern and profile I have for women in my upcoming book, The Woman Crisis. Now, your A.J. Johnson definitely is a woman in crisis because she can't see how she is very emotionally and mentally immature and how she is participating in sexual deviancy. And these are 2 chapters that I cover in my book, The Woman Crisis. And when I looked at A.J. Johnson and the way she was dressed at 50 years old, or she might even be older, it shows me how she has not really matured. And this is one of the problems with many of your modern women. Many of them grow old, but many of them don't grow up. And the reason why they don't grow up is due to the way they are raised in our feminist culture. And because they're raised to be feminists and not women, they never graduate to that title of woman because they never grow to become a woman who becomes a wife. And they don't become wife material because Madison Avenue and Hollywood, they want to arrest the development of American women because they want to continue keeping them out here to be consumers, and they know that the most impulsive consumers are teenagers, so they keep the woman's mental age at the age from about 16 to 19, and as these women get older, they still continue to behave like teenagers. And that shows how immature your A.J. Johnson is as related to sex, because her whole viewpoint of sex comes from that of a woman whose development has been arrested at about 16 to 19 years old. And when you have a woman whose development has been arrested to 16 to 19 years old, she's sitting there thinking that the sex acts in pornography are perfectly fine, and this is why she had no problem participating in a threesome with 2 men, because she probably saw this in a pornographic movie when she was younger and probably got enamored by that sex act and thought nothing of it and decided to go out here and celebrate her 50th birthday by participating in this deviant sex act. Now, many people will sit there and they'll watch pornography and see a woman having sex with 2 men and think that that's normal, but no, that's not normal at all. That is sexual deviancy. And it is sexual deviancy because here you have a woman who is naked with 2 other men, and these 2 other men are penetrating her. Now, your A.J. Johnson tries to romanticize this deviant sexual act by saying it was like a beautiful dance, but there was nothing beautiful about that act. What was happening to your A.J. Johnson is these men were exploiting her and these men were running a train on her. And as she's sitting here romanticizing things, she doesn't really understand that these men are basically taking advantage of her. And while she's sitting there talking about how they flip-flopped her and passed her around, what they were doing was basically what they call spit roasting her. So while she was sitting there sucking on one rod and getting penetrated by the other, what they were doing was doing that for a little bit of a minute and then flipping her around, and then she would suck the atomic waste from her, from what she had put on one man's rod, and as the other guy then stuck his rod into the atomic waste. And as these men were going out here and participating in this deviancy, I guarantee you it was not a so-called romantic dance. No, these guys were just flip-flopping her, going from putting the rod in her mouth to her atomic waste reactor. Then, in some cases, I believe they probably went in the booty as well. Because these type of deviants, they will go out here and participate in all sorts of deviancy. And what's really disturbing here is that this deviancy is being presented as something that is romantic and something that is normal. And what's being done here is they're trying to socially engineer the idea in a young girl's mind that getting a train run on you is normal. No, this is not a normal sex act. This is a deviant sex act, and it is a sex act that is done by perverted young men who just want to go out here and use a woman's body like a toilet bowl. Because basically what they were doing to your AJ Johnson after she dropped the skid mark thong was they were just using her like a toilet bowl, and they were not respecting her body, and they were not even respecting their own bodies, because here you had, again, two men naked in front of a woman, and two of these men with their male rods exposed and their testicles exposed in front of each other. And that kind of behavior in and of itself is kind of suspect, because no guy wants to be in a room with another guy with his junk hanging out for other men to see. That's not something that's natural, and it's not normal, but that's what your AJ Johnson here is pushing. And what's really sad here is that she's not only being exploited by those two men who exploited her on her 50th birthday, but she's also being exploited in the media, because the media wants to push and promote the narrative of the Black Jezebel. And what your AJ Johnson is doing by talking openly about this deviant sex act is she doesn't even understand how this is being presented in media to further promote the idea that your modern black woman is a Jezebel and is so sexually promiscuous that she has no discretion whatsoever. So what she's doing is presenting an idea in people's minds that the black woman is not a woman of character, and her openly talking and romanticizing this deviant sex act, this not only promotes the stereotype of the Black Jezebel, but it also presents a really poor example to all of these young sisters out here. At, I believe, what her age is now, about 57, 58, you would think this woman would want to go out here and be an example to all of those young sisters of what a black woman is supposed to be. But instead of her presenting a positive example of black womanhood by keeping her sexual affairs private and to herself, she comes out in the open and presents a act straight out of a pornographic movie and then romanticizes it. And again, what kind of example does that set for all of these young sisters out here when they have a grown woman who is the age of an OG, or what they call an elder, who is supposed to be presenting an example of womanhood for other women. I mean, this goes back to the old African proverb, which states, a race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women, and as the woman goes, so goes the race. And what direction is the race going in when you have black women who are in their 50s, like A.J. Johnson, who are supposed to be the example of elders, going out here talking about how they participate in threesomes with men, and then casually talking about sexually deviant acts like it's just picking up a candy off the table or talking about getting some ice cream from Carvel. I mean, to see a grown woman who is supposed to be an example to other sisters of how she is supposed to carry and conduct herself, acting like a what they call a 304. This is embarrassing to watch because it shows how our women are in crisis, because there are no women modeling womanhood, because we've got 2 to 3 generations of women who have not grown up to maturity and have not grown to become adult women, because their development has been arrested by the Madison Avenue and Hollywood, who want to keep our women stranded in a state of being perpetual teenagers. And because these immature women have not matured to become a wife, which is the graduation into womanhood, these women are still acting like they're teenagers. And what's sad is we've got an almost 57, 58-year-old woman sitting here continuing to act like a teenager, and then even worse, participating in sex acts that she has seen in pornographic movies and thinking that she's doing something empowering, but in actuality, all she did was get turned out by these 2 men. And she talks about, oh, they were like the 3 Musketeers, and she got breakfast with them. But after those guys got into that skid mark thong, these whoremonger males had no interest in this woman anymore, and they probably bounced right after that. And she's all talking about, oh, it was so empowering and so beautiful how these men were flip-flopping her, but they were just basically spit roasting her, and they probably did more than go please her and pass her. Again, this is stuff you would see in pornographic movies. And what's disturbing about this whole incident she's talking about is she's participating in sex acts that were basically considered taboo in pornographic movies in the 80s up to the 2000s. And what's really disturbing is she's acting like this is perfectly normal. And even more disturbing than your A.J. Johnson's cavalier attitude is the fact that there are many young girls out there who are participating in the same behavior. And sadly, many of those girls, because they had no mother to give them guidance and no father to give them leadership, they're thinking that having a train run on them is pleasure. But no, having a train run on you is sexual abuse, and it is completely perverted. And it is perverted for 2 men to be naked in front of a woman, and it is sexual abuse because you have 2 men, they're not pleasuring this woman, they are abusing her body, because this is not the way God wanted men and women to be having sex with each other. No, he reserved sex for marriage, and he told people to abstain from fornication, because this act, when you really start to think about it critically, it is just extremely unclean, because here you have one man who is putting a rod inside of a woman and another putting his rod in her mouth. And oftentimes these guys will then, what she said, like she said, flip-flop and switch, and she will be sucking the atomic waste that was on one man's rod as the other is then penetrating her. And sometimes there is sodomy involved in these acts, and these men are not only going out here and putting rods in the woman's nuclear waste reactor. They're also putting rods in the anus, and they are also switching these bodily fluids like fecal matter. So it is an absolutely disgusting act. And the more I think about these disturbing acts, I really start to understand why David Carroll, the late great YouTuber, said he would never kiss a black woman on the mouth, because when you think about what your AJ Johnson here is admitting to, this is a reason why it's just not prudent to kiss this woman on the mouth, because she's probably had that mouth on two guys' rods, and she's probably tossed a salad here or there. Now I find, all of these things, they're just, again, absolutely disturbing to think about. And it's just disturbing to think about a woman participating in this deviancy and thinking this is perfectly normal. And again, we've got 2 to 3 generations of women who believe this behavior is perfectly fine. And again, I want to ask most people, would you be comfortable with your daughter going out here and being open like this after participating in this type of disturbing act? I mean, this, again, it's just absolutely disturbing, and it just shows how your AJ Johnson really is not really thinking like a woman should, or presenting a positive example of black womanhood. And it's really sad, because when I saw her in House Party, again, she was a very positive image of black womanhood, and it's sad to see her go down to the level of the black Jezebel and promote sexual promiscuity and sexual deviancy as something that's perfectly normal. This is, again, the kind of stuff that was reserved for pornographic performers, and it's just something that is just considered, as I see it, disturbing, again, to think about a woman, again, being used like this, getting a train run on her, and she's romanticizing it like it's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And again, just absolutely disturbing when you think about it. And she's like, oh, it's a salsa. But no, this thing makes me want to hurl salsa, because I just think about how sick and disturbing it is. And what's really sick and disturbing is the normalization and romanticization of sexual deviancy here, because what you see in a pornographic movie is not something you want to participate in real life. And that's the sad part your AJ Johnson hasn't really understood, because she has not grown to a state of mental maturity to truly become a woman. Now, I go in depth on the arrested development of the woman and the sexual deviancy of the modern feminist woman in my upcoming book, The Woman Crisis, and I hope to have that book available by this fall. I'm in the middle of getting towards concluding the first draft, and until then, you can pick up my other book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, to understand why women like your AJ Johnson will be single for the rest of their life. And the reason why they will be single for the rest of their life is because they participate in deviant sexual acts like this. And it just disgusts me to even talk about this, because these acts just are completely disturbing and completely unclean. And if you want to see me make more videos, definitely not like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, a fabulous first season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, the fabulous first season, in paperback and e-readers today.